people out here. Last week I would have got $100. It would only be about 75. And then beginning this week, I was getting calls from all over this area, from the mill chick. Anchorage many times last night and saved me a ticket for the Russian meal. So I hope the ladies of the Russian Orthodox Church are very busy today because I increased the number of 50 people. So that is encouraging. It really shows interest on our peninsula and in our community. We'll begin our session today by pledging the allegiance to our flag. You'll stand with me. I pledge allegiance to the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. When I first came to Alaska, if anything went wrong, the biggest excuse and scapegoat or cop-out was, this is Alaska. Well, we've got some changes in the program, and this is Alaska. I got a call this morning from Dee Langness. She said she had a bad night and she's going to the hospital. So you can strike her name and instead put Mr. Gary Holthouse. He's with the Alaska Humanities. That's number one correction. William Jorgensen did call me much earlier, and he is in Seattle. So standing in for him will be Dr. Bob Frederick. And then for representing the Kenai Native Association, our Chief George Miller flew to Anchorage this morning. His assistant, John Monfort, went to Seattle. And hopefully we'll have many representatives of KNA who will be talking to you about the native land claims or whatever they want to talk to you about. They have at least 45 to 50 minutes. We've got not much time, so we hope that you will be talking with us. I've mentioned to you about the 1-hour credit, and if you have not signed up for the 1-hour credit and you still want to do so, you may slip out and register with Betty England. We are very pleased that people have this opportunity for that 1-hour credit. If you haven't signed or registered, please do so. We want everyone here to sign our register. There's a map of the school in case you haven't seen one. It's on the end of the table out there, along with the other data. And it gives you the location of the cafeteria, the teacher's lounge, the boys' room, and the girls' rooms. Another change, which might be good news for you, is that we lowered the price of the meal tickets for the cafeteria to $1.15. Again, this is Alaska. The chickens didn't come in. So Mrs. Hofstetter said, we'll just serve what we serve the students. I said, that's fine. She said, we'll just charge $1.15. So if you haven't picked up your meal tickets and you paid for the cafeteria tickets, you will have money coming. And if I made an error of giving you too much money or too little money, just tell my secretaries out there and we'll try to adjust it later. This is more or less a minute work. And if you have not purchased tickets, you may pay as you go through the line. Don't give us any more money. That's one of my biggest headaches. So I think the most popular thing has been the Russian meal, and those ladies are working industriously. Father Tardonsky of the Russian Orthodox Church told me this morning that his church would be open, or he confirmed it this morning. We talked about it earlier. And Mrs. Peterson will be at our museum. And if you don't know where that is, as you are downtown, you'll see a big sign that says museum, and it shows the area, or word of mouth. It's hard to say just where that church is. You get down to Old Kenai, you'll get lost if you've never been there before. But it's in that vicinity, and the museum is at the upstairs of the Fort Kenai. There are some interesting things there. We're kind of proud of our museum, and we're proud of the fact that we do have a Russian Orthodox Church as our heritage to the Russian culture. Those people who are interested in the bicentennial Commission. There is a meeting of the members of the Bicentennial, or we're working on the Mayor's Bicentennial Committee, and those people from Anchorage are Bicentennial work. There is a meeting Friday morning in the city manager's office at 7:30. And you may have breakfast or whatever you wish. There is a cafe there. I mentioned what we have on the menu today, and it's enchiladas. Maybe you heard it over the radio. Next on our program, I'd like to introduce you to our principal. He's been very cooperative with our conference, Dr. Colin Morris.
It's a pleasure for me to welcome all of you on behalf of Kenai Central High School. I think this kind of an experience is very good for the high school, and I know it'll be very good for you. I feel kind of privileged. I know there's some quite talented people behind me as well as in front of me, and I hope you'll all relax and enjoy the day. I think it'll be a good experience for all of you. What I'm going to do now for just a couple of minutes is give you a very brief history of this schooling in Kenai, at least. I've got a two-page paper written by Shirley Dennison, who's the chairman of our social studies department. She wrote it for our handbooks, our faculty and student handbooks, and I thought it was kind of appropriate for a historical conference. So if you'll just bear with me for a couple of minutes, I'll give you a brief outline of the history of the high school, at least in the Kenai area. And again, this was written by Shirley Dennison. As far as anyone knows, the first school was built in Kenai by the Russians and operated by them even during territorial days. It was built on the site of the present Fort Kenai and served primarily as a religious school for the Alaska natives of Kenai. At that time, Kenai was a small fishing village and was accessible only by boat in the summer and by dog team in the winter. The road system was opened in the late 40s, but was barely passable until 1949, and then only during the winter and midsummer. The airfield was built in the early 40s and has been expanded and improved every year since that time. After World War II, the population of Kenai was increased as many returning veterans and their families began homesteading the area. The entire village of Kenai occupied a federal reserve for the airfield, and few permanent homes were built because the occupants could not obtain title to the land. However, as homesteading land was opened, permanent dwellings were built, and by 1948 it became apparent that the old condemned frame building, built in 1926, was no longer adequate as a school building, and that the villagers persuaded the territorial legislature to provide funds for a new school. Construction was begun on a steel and reinforced concrete school designed by one of the teachers, Mrs. Ruth Connolly. A split-level structure was selected because it provided the greatest space, required the least heat, and presented a low profile so that low-flying planes would be more likely to miss the chimney. Everyone in the community attended the opening in the spring of 1950. This building is now the center section of the Kenai Elementary School, located on the Kenai Spur Road just across from the mall. With the construction of Wildwood Station in the early 50s and the subsequent arrival of military personnel, the school was expanded twice until further expansion was not possible. Then the discovery of oil in the area further swelled the population. Statehood was granted for the city of Kenai, and the city of Kenai was incorporated. One of the first acts of the city of Kenai was to bond itself for the construction of a new high school. Construction of the present Kenai Central High School was begun in 1963. The building was nearly ready for occupancy when the Friday earthquake of 1964 jolted Kenai. A few light fixtures in the library, some ceiling tile, and other minor damage was sustained, but the damage was repaired and the building opened to its first students in the fall of 1964. Since that time, the walls have been pushed out, portables brought in, and new shop buildings and a vocational building has been added. These modifications have provided for changes in student needs, and new modifications have been proposed. And I'll intercede here for just a second to say that by next year, theoretically at least, we're supposed to have a new section down on this end with 8 more classrooms and a new library, and on the other end, going out that direction, there will be a swimming pool and another small gymnasium. Before 1950, students were offered correspondence courses with assistance from the elementary school staff whenever needed or students were sent outside by their parents to stay with relatives or friends until their high school courses were completed. Some of the Alaska Native students attended Mount Edgecombe School, and a few Kenai students went to Anchorage or Seward to school. However, by 1950, there were 10 high school students enrolled in the Kenai Territorial School that had just been built. In 1952, all 4 of the graduating seniors went on to schools of higher education. Kenai has not achieved a 100% record since that time. Membership in the graduating classes has steadily increased in number, and soon second-generation Kenai high graduates will be receiving their diplomas. No one remembers why Kenai's athletic teams were called cardinals. The cardinal is not an Alaskan bird, but the cardinals are truly representative of the courage, skill, and love of the game, whatever it is, that typifies Alaskans. Track was the first organized sport offered to Kenai students, since it required no special facilities. But basketball has been the major sports activity since the first gymnasium was built in the second addition to the Kenai Territorial School. Mr. Jim Elson joined the teaching staff in 1958, accepted the coaching position, and soon the Cardinals became a major contender for new state championships. Wrestling was introduced by Jerry Neer in 1962 and gained momentum each year thereafter. Gymnastics was introduced in 1968, but has not yet gained the status of a major sport. Kenai's first football team was trained in 1968 by Coach Bruce West and played its first game on the only available grass field, Wildwood Station, that fall. Many Kenai residents had never seen either wrestling or football until Kenai presented those sports, and knowing nothing of the game, it was truly amazing that both sports are so well supported. The cheerleaders and pep club were organized at the same time that the first basketball team began playing, and the Girls Athletic Association was established at Kenai in 1960. The Cardettes or Flag Girls were not seen until 1966, and this was a student-motivated activity. The first high school chorus was organized by Mrs. Jessie Munson in 1957, and the first band was started in 1960-61 by Mr. John Gunnison. Senior class plays have been a tradition at KCHN since the first graduating class, and in some years each class, freshman through senior, presented a play. Soccer teams, ping pong teams, hockey teams, forensic teams, and debate teams have come and gone as the students' interests have changed. Some of these teams are being reorganized. Various clubs have existed since the earliest days of the school. For example, the Pep Club, the Spanish Club, Letterman's Club, and Student Council. The National Honor Society was first chartered in 1963 under the direction of Mrs. Shirley Dennison and has been active since that time. The first school annual was published in 1961 under the leadership of Mrs. Irene Anderson. Its name, Kaknu, means, quote, village by the Kenai River, unquote, and was selected by its first staff. The first newspaper was published in 1958. The name was chosen by the student body and has been retained since that time despite several attempts to change it. Both publications have increased in popularity, and some of the earlier copies have become cherished possessions. Traditional activities such as the annual Spanish Club dinner, homecoming, junior-senior prom, pep week, and talent show have continued for more than the past 10 years. But the turkey tourney, freshman initiation, and National Honor Society slave sale and others have been deleted from the activity schedule. The senior class installed in 1973 the school symbol, the Kenai Cardinal, which is now on the floor in the Commons area. As each new class graduates, old traditions are forgotten and new ones established. In Kenai's ever-shifting interests and concerns, its restless population, and its changing and growing economy, Kenai Central High School has shown its adaptability and is destined for many more changes in the future as it adjusts to the needs of the community it serves. And again, I'd like to compliment Shirley Dennison for looking up this information and writing it down and making it available for the people of the community. And before I sit down, I'd like to compliment Peggy Thompson. She's done a good deal of work for this conference. And again, as far as the school is concerned, you're welcome to make yourself accessible to any part of the school, and it'll be accessible to you. If there's any way that I can help you, or any teacher or any of us can be of service, please let us know. And again, thank you for coming.
We are a part of the Kenai Mayor's Committee. This was formed some time ago for bicentennial work. And what you are participating in today is a part of the total bicentennial era for the city of Kenai. Some of the activities in the future we hope will be more in the theatrical line. So now I introduce you our mayor, Jim Elson.
Thank you, Peggy. I really think you have an impressive program, and I think you should be really pleased with the turnout that you've accomplished. I was a little disappointed when I looked through the program that one area in history that I've always had a special interest for wasn't included. There's nobody in there talking about building inspection. Over the years, the last, I'll say since I graduated from high school, I've probably inspected a great many of the buildings that are preserved throughout the West and Southwest. I've gone through all the missions in California, and from San Diego on through West Texas, down to Rio Grande, on to Houston, and on up to Tucson, Phoenix. And by the way, one of the most interesting I found was there's a white one, and I can't remember the name of it to save me. It's just outside of Tucson. If you're ever down that way, be sure and see that one. But that sort of falls to your format. It's in the vein of the religious experience, in the vein of the American experience, of course, along with all those. So, been through numerous forts that have been reconstructed. Was in jail at Yuma. Went to the saloon at Langtree, where Judge Rory Bean was. Often wondered why there weren't more missions around there. Maybe didn't. Oh, there's a bordello in San Antonio that was saved by the local historical society. They took on the city of San Antonio, the state of Texas, and the federal government against urban renewal. I think they had the support of the Daughters of the Revolution, too. I also spent quite a bit of time in the Indian experience. I lived a year in Phoenix and spent a lot of time up on the plateau around the Grand Canyon, going through the old villages there, the ruins, some of which have been reconstructed. In the Verde Valley, the Tuzigoot, which is a name I can always remember, Montezuma's Castle, very remarkable things. And anyway, over the years of wandering around through these different buildings and so on, I often think, well, now who did this? Who reconstructed this? And that's about as far as the thought got. Maybe occasionally I conjure an image of some white-haired old man with a mustache and an eyepiece and a couple college kids putting these stones together, whatever. But it wasn't until recently, when I first heard about this conference on the Kenai Area History, that I realized the enthusiasm and the dedication that goes in to making many of these projects and in bringing the history of this country to the local citizenry or to the general public. I don't know how many of you can imagine the hours of dedicated work that these people have put in order to put on this conference. It's really remarkable. And the energy and the optimism of them. And I can't help but feel that this is really going to be a significant thing, experience in itself, in what you're going to have this next 2 days. It's really a very important thing. I'm very pleased to see that it's being put on the tape, videotape, and I hope you will all share in the history of Kenai, enjoy it, and while you're staying in town, if you have any problems, you need any help, don't hesitate to call City Hall. We're in the airport terminal building. There's also the Chamber of Commerce office in the mall, and you're most welcome to come by if you have a problem or need information or anything. Call on either one of us. We'll be glad to serve you. Just don't be surprised if you call City Hall and you ask about something and they say, it's not my job. At any rate, welcome to Kenai. Have a good conference, I think it's going to be a very significant event in our history. So, thank you.
Before our mayor found out that this program was going to be on tape, he was just going to get up and say hello. He's a typical politician.
Don't forget, I was 72 years old last time I was.
That's right. He keeps harking back to Mark Twain. I would just like to take a few minutes and introduce some of the people who are going to be serving as the experienced chairman and as the consultant. And if you'll hold your applause until we get everybody introduced, and as I read off your name, please stand and remain standing until I've introduced everyone. The native experienced chairman is Alan Boris, who's a geologist and anthropologist at the community college. Alan's over here. He's being assisted by William Workman, who is an anthropologist from Alaska Methodist University, and Doug Rager, who is a regional archaeologist for the U.S. Forest Service, and is a local man. Mary Willits refers to him as Dougie Rager. James Carey, who is with the Alaska Native Language Center, is a linguist and will be working on the Kenaichi language with Peter Kalafansky, Bertha Monfor, and Fedosia Sakalov. The chairman of the Russian experience is Sister Victoria from St. Herman's Pastoral School, and she is being assisted by Yanez Haas. The chairman of the American experience is Mrs. Mary Willits, who is being assisted by Morgan Sherwood from the University of California, and Claus Nasky from the University of Alaska. Let's give these people a nice round of applause. Our next speaker kind of disappointed us. It's not Beatrice Langness, who is in the hospital this morning, and we certainly hope that she's all right. But our next speaker is a person who is no stranger to the community. He was a pastor in the area for several years, at which time he tried mightily to save my soul, but he totally failed. He also has served as the admissions director for Alaska Methodist University, and he's very important as far as this conference is concerned, because several months ago, I believe it was last spring, he was down lining up programs for the National Endowment, and Peggy and I got to talking with him about the possibility of this conference, and the grant was submitted to the Alaska Humanities Forum Board, for which he serves as the executive director. And it's my pleasure now to introduce Mr. Gary Holthouse.
I don't remember trying to save his soul. If I failed, maybe that's no great loss. It's a privilege to be here and to bring you greetings from Beatty Langness, who is in the hospital, and I hope getting over whatever it is that put her there. And also to bring you greetings from the State Committee of the Alaska Humanities Forum, which is one of the sponsors of this conference. If any of you do have questions about the bicentennial or its purposes, the chances are good that I can't answer them. But I would be happy to put you in touch with Beatty or with her office. And if you are serious about asking the Bicentennial Commission for funding for a particular project, I'd be glad to carry that message back and give her any names and addresses or phone numbers which you may wish to leave with me. I would like to take just a minute to talk about one of the values of history which I think is often overlooked, and that is that history provides us with an opportunity to know what we are missing. And I'm very pleased with this conference, as part of its native experience, to have included a section on the language and a linguist, because I believe that all over Alaska today, Native people are feeling a real sense of loss with the gradual disintegration and disuse, disappearance in some cases, of their language. So when I talk about knowing what we are missing from history, I don't mean something that is sentimental and nostalgic but rather something that is very complex and important. And in this particular case, I refer specifically to the loss of language and to the loss of personal identity which that entails. I'm also pleased that you have approached the conference in the fashion that you have by dealing with the native experience and the Russian experience and the American experience, because I think one of the values of history is the opportunity to look at alternative lifestyles. That's a phrase that's been relatively popular in our country the last few years. But history offers us an opportunity to do that in a kind of safe way by seeing how other people dealt with the environments in which they found themselves. And the Kenai Peninsula is certainly one which is rich in a variety of lifestyles. And I think you have chosen an appropriate course, therefore, for the conference. I also hope that it is possible for people to use what they have learned of the past on behalf of the present. And I hope that when you leave this place, you will use the information or the insight, the wisdom which has come to you from this conference to examine contemporary issues and contemporary lifestyles. And perhaps if all of us had a better sense of history and a better understanding of who we have been in the past, we would have a better opportunity to make wise public policy decisions now and in the future. So I salute you on this enterprise and wish you well, and thank you for the opportunity to participate.
There are some other people who have been very important in our conference. I'll read off some more names, and again, if you'll hold your applause until we introduce them all and then give them a rousing round of applause. We have Dr. Robert Frederick, who is the Executive Director of the Alaska Historical Commission, who was quite active, along with Morgan Sherwood, in the Conference on Alaskan History, which this conference is based upon. We've more or less tried to segregate one area of Alaska and do what they did back in 1967. The art sketches for the conference book were done by the Kenai Central High School Art Department, James Evenson, instructor. As you note, we have an audiovisual taping with the crew here. The instructor is Tom Ackerley. You can obtain a college credit through the Kenai Peninsula Community College. The articles in the resource book are written by the experienced chairman. Satterine Haywood and Deanne Mapes assisted in correspondence. Gail Glad and Jean Haller are coordinating the Russian and Indian dancing this evening at the Russian dinner. David Chin is serving as the finance chairman. The hosts and hostesses are the Kenai Central Alaska History classes, Louis Greer, instructor, Susan Crane and Michael Linhartson, chairman, and the Kenai Native Association is represented by George Miller, Fedosia Sakaloff, Peter Kalifornsky, Bertha Monfort, and John Monfort. Pictures of the conference are being taken by the Cockney photographers here at the high school. Mrs. Chris Shepard, instructor. Colin Morse has been very helpful, as has the entire staff at the high school. The publication of the conference book is by the graphics art class, Patrick O'Connell, instructor, and they finished up this morning during the wee hours of the morning. The Russian meal is being put on by the ladies of the Russian Orthodox Church, chaired by Roberta Ivanov. The conference book was typed by the Kenai Clerical Corporation here at the high school, Mrs. Alexander, instructor, Catherine Main, office manager, and the transportation was arranged by Mr. Mike Christian. And the conference is being put on through funds provided by the Alaska Humanities Forum in conjunction with the grant application by the City of Kenai through the Kenai Mayor's Advisory Committee on History and Tradition. And I think these people deserve a nice round of applause for their work. The book, which has been prepared, is going to be, there is no charge for the book, and I believe that we're going to distribute that after Morgan Sherwood finishes with the keynote address. Is that correct? There's going to be a coffee break? It's just right after Morgan's address. Okay. there was some rumor going around that there was a charge for this book, but there is no charge for this book, and this is what it looks like, and we hope that you enjoy it. Our keynote speaker is certainly no stranger to Alaska. He's written several books on Alaska, and he has another book which has been accepted for publication on this area of Alaska. He has a